Welcome back. Let's continue working with our analysis by adding some levels of detail to our report. So again, I'm back here in Dashboard Author on the left-hand side. I've gone into Analysis, and now I'm going to find the report we were working on, Cloud Product Spend. I'm going to make this easier on myself next time, and I'm going to put a star there so it starts showing up in my favorites, and I don't have to come in here looking for it every time. So we had done our report that gave us our AWS product spend by month. As you can see, we are allowed to add other dimensions to this pivot table. So that gives us some drill down capability. First, I'm going to make this a little bit wider here because once we start adding detail, I'm going to need this column to be a little bigger. So first I have product. We see some things here like amplify, backup, etc. What may be interesting to know is what application is using those products. So I'm going to add application underneath product here. Again, this little maximize arrow here, you can click, make it a little easier to read while you're editing. I'm going to resize my column again. And now I can see my application names that appear under the different products. If you want to collapse all these to the highest level, click on these three buttons and hit collapse. And this is usually the way you'll want the report to show up when your end users first come in. And then they can drill down into specific products by clicking the plus sign. So I can see application 1 and application 3 are using my data pipeline. Another interesting feature that we may want to add into this is how about environment? So I know whether or not that spend is coming from test, dev, prod, etc. So I'm going to add a third level. As you can see, it's very easy to add levels that you can drill down into these reports. Something to consider though, and it's not a problem now because we're not doing any major calculations or anything, but the more levels you add, especially if you have calculated fields, the longer a report can take to run. So just something to keep in mind. Now that I've done that, let's talk about filtering. We discussed it briefly in the first video. I had gone in and added a filter to just show AWS. As you can see in the report, there's no way for an end user to select a different cloud if they are in a multi-cloud environment. So I want to give them that capability. So instead of having what I call a hidden filter like this, I'm going to click on the three buttons and I'm going to add a control to the top of the sheet. And this will add a drop-down filter that you're very familiar with throughout the Vega platform. So now end users can come in and select whichever cloud they would like to display. Now this needs a little bit of formatting. As you can see, it comes up with our column name, and it's actually kind of short here. It looks a little squished. So I'm going to click on the three buttons. I'm going to edit, and I'm going to change this to just say cloud provider. The other thing you can do is you can resize the width of this. This is very helpful when you get into some of the longer named fields. For cloud provider, it's not a problem. Now, something I do want to show you that's kind of tricky in QuickSight. If your properties window is open, you can see now my filter takes up the whole screen. I also can't resize it or move it anywhere. And you'll spend a lot of time going through all these menus trying to figure out why you suddenly can't change this filter. Close out your Properties tab, and then it will go back to where you can resize it. You can move it around if you have multiple filters. Much easier to edit that way. So now, if I click on my table, I can see I have a cloud provider filter. What if I want to add something else? How about product? This is listing a lot of products for us. So I'm going to add, you can't drag and drop into a filter like I just started to do. You have to click the add button and click product. And by default, this will not appear at the top of your report. It will only appear as a hidden filter. If you want it at the top, again, you have to add that control to the top of the sheet. Now, something I'll discuss here quickly, but will make more sense in future videos, is when you edit a filter, you can have it apply to just this visual, which in our case, this visual is our pivot report. You can have it apply to this whole sheet. This is a sheet right here. So if I had multiple pivot tables, or if I had a pivot table and a graph, or a table, or any of the other visualizations, and this was set to single sheet, then that means it would apply to everything on this sheet. If I had an additional sheet with an additional report in it, or additional graphics, etc., I can have that filter apply to all of my sheets by clicking this last icon here. So now this would apply to all of the sheets that I create within this report. If that doesn't make sense now, don't worry about it. When we go back and start creating some other sheets and other graphics, it'll make more sense. But for now, I've added my product equals to the top here. Again, let's edit it. And I'm just going to call it, in this case, I'm going to call it CSP service. Close this out, because again, you notice I can't move, resize, or rearrange these when there is a panel over here on the right hand side. But once I close it out, then I can. And if you notice on CSP service, you start getting a lot of things cut off because the names can be extremely long. So I can drag it and make it as long as I need to show the full names. I can also, if I wanted, have CSP service come before cloud provider. I actually wanted that to go back, so I'm going to set it up this way. By the way, like most products, this does have an undo. So if you make a mistake or multiple mistakes, you can keep clicking undo to get rid of the error you made. So now I have my report. I can change from AWS to Azure, GCP, and of course, select multiple if I wanted to do that. Let's go ahead and add another filter for dates. My report right now is showing past 13 months. Let's add a filter on closing month, which is obviously the month you receive your CSP invoice, which the date will always be the first of that month. So February's spend will have a closing month of 2/1 and then the year. Go to closing month, click on the three dots and click edit. This is going to be a hidden one, so customers won't or your end users will not be editing it. But we could do that. Maybe we'll do that in a future video. But for now, we're going to look at the filter type. And this is pretty common across the different filters you can put in here, is you'll have different filter types. We could do a range. We could do relative dates, which is what we're going to use for this. And we could do a top and a bottom, like most recent X months or oldest X months. We're going to do relative. Our granularity of the data in the platform is by day, so you don't need to change that. And then I'm going to filter by year. I could filter by year, quarters, month, day, week. But I'm going to stick with year because what I want to do is just show spend for 2025. So instead of previous year in the range, I'm going to select this year. In this case, anything dates that are null, any lines I want to exclude. That shouldn't be happening with our closing month date. But just in case a weird line gets in there, I'm going to exclude nulls. And then you'll notice at the bottom of these filters, there's this filtering condition. This is where you could nest filters if you wanted to. It's a little advanced for what we're doing today, so I'm going to stick with my standard filter. And you always have to hit apply on a filter. So I will apply it, and now we just have January through March of this year. Now I want to change the sort on this because I actually want it to go January 1st instead of March. So I'm going to click up here on my visualization button, bring up the name of my columns again. I'm going to take closing month, click on the three dots, and sort order is blank. I'm going to sort ascending. There we go. Now we have January to March. Now something that you'll notice is you'll see a lot of zeros. Those aren't really zero spend. If you've ever looked at the detailed bills from your customers, and I don't mean the PDF invoice, but if you get down into the, say, hourly cur file, you will see that that data, depending on your CSP, can go up to 12 significant digits. So it can be very, very, very small. So I don't want these zeros to show up in here. So first of all, I'm going to do a couple things and make sure this isn't like 99 cents. I'm going to add some decimal places to my report and go to Format, More Formatting Options, Decimal Point. Now I'm going to add 2 significant digits. And I can see these are still 0. So let's play with a filter to see if we can get rid of those. You may or may not want to do this. Obviously, if you filter out enough significant digits that you can really not have your numbers tie out to the penny. But to show you what the QuickSight and Dashboard Author can do, I want to go ahead and show this to you. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to click on my filter button. This number, if you recall, is called net fiscal. So I'm going to add a filter on my net fiscal amount. Again, I'm going to edit it. And those numbers are a sum of a bunch of net fiscal detail rows. Here's that filtering condition again. I'm going to have it, I want it greater than, or actually I'm going to do greater than. And I want my minimum value, actually, I'm going to do greater than or equal to be a penny. And if there are any null lines, I don't need those included. We'll filter those out and hit apply. That's better. Now my zeros are gone. You'll see that this quad product is 38 cents. So it seems my filter is working pretty well. If you have a blank, that just means that those products or services were not used to that month. So there's nothing wrong with your filtering. That's just a case of where maybe they were only started up and shut down for testing during a particular month. Okay, I think that's enough for filtering. It does bring up a couple questions though. You'll notice this says we could use a parameter. What is a parameter? And what if I didn't want this to be net fiscal all the time? What if I wanted to be able to switch between net fiscal and net cash? That sounds like something for the next video. So in the next video, what we're going to get into is the use of parameters and calculated fields to let us switch between net fiscal and net cash in our report. And of course, can be used for about anything else you can think of. Thanks.